L. Ron Hubbard's strong condemnation of homosexuality within Scientology may have had several layered motivations beyond the cultural norms of the mid-20th century. When examining this through a critical and scientific lens, it's important to consider both the societal backdrop and potential personal or organizational motives. 1. Societal influence and personal beliefs. In the 1950s and 60s, when Hubbard was developing Scientology, homosexuality was widely stigmatized and even classified as a mental illness. Hubbard's early writings on the subject mirror these mainstream medical views, labeling homosexuality as a form of sexual perversion. In Dianetics and other early texts, he referred to homosexuality as a condition that lowers one's emotional tone scale, associating it with negative traits like irresponsibility or immorality. This could reflect a strategic decision to align with then-dominant cultural attitudes, allowing Scientology to fit within societal norms at the time. However, Hubbard's denunciation went beyond the cultural status quo, suggesting deeper personal or organizational motives. His labeling of homosexuality as a sign of aberration or insanity hints at a desire to shape sexual morality in a way that reinforces control and adherence to Scientology's rigid behavioral framework. By portraying nonconformity, especially in sexual matters, as a sign of mental weakness or deviance, Hubbard could establish tighter control over followers' identities, choices, and self-conception. Control over personal identity and behavior. A hallmark of many cult-like organizations is the attempt to control or restrict individual identity, especially aspects of it that might challenge the organization's power. Hubbard's focus on sexuality could be seen as a strategy to maintain tight control over members' lives, ensuring that they internalize his doctrines fully. Homosexuality, as a form of sexual identity that defied traditional norms, may have been seen as a threat to this control. By labeling it as an aberration, Hubbard could have been attempting to suppress any form of sexual autonomy or expression that might undermine the cohesion and obedience within the group. Hubbard often promoted a purity narrative, where individuals needed to cleanse themselves of mental and emotional weaknesses to ascend through Scientology's spiritual hierarchy, e.g., the bridge to total freedom. His opposition to homosexuality could be part of a larger framework that defined deviancy from the norm as a block to spiritual progress. In Scientology's auditing practices, sexual orientation could easily be targeted as a supposed flaw to be corrected, thereby increasing the pressure on members to conform and accept the idea that their personal desires might be harmful or wrong. 3. Potential personal insecurity or projection. There is also speculation among critics of Scientology that Hubbard's intense focus on homosexuality might stem from personal psychological conflicts or insecurities. Given Hubbard's controlling tendencies and desire to appear as a messianic figure, it is possible that any deviation from what he considered normal sexuality triggered deep discomfort. This would align with his broader authoritarian approach, where any form of nonconformity was treated as a sign of mental illness or spiritual deficiency. His hostility to homosexuality could be a projection of his fears or anxieties about control, identity, and power, especially in a time when rigid gender roles and heterosexuality were more aggressively policed. 4. Homosexuality as a challenge to hierarchical authority. In many authoritarian systems, strict gender roles and heteronormative standards are enforced as a means of maintaining a clear hierarchical social order. Homosexuality, by defying traditional gender norms and sexual expectations, poses a challenge to rigid systems of authority. For a figure like Hubbard, who sought to position himself as the ultimate authority, any behavior that disrupted traditional hierarchies could be perceived as a threat to his control. Homosexuality, being nonconformist in this regard, could symbolize rebellion against the rigid, hierarchical structures that Hubbard sought to establish within Scientology. 5. Diverting focus from Scientology's own internal contradictions. Hubbard's condemnation of homosexuality might have also served as a diversion tactic. By demonizing a specific group or behavior, he could distract followers from the more questionable aspects of Scientology itself, such as its exploitative practices, e.g., financial extortion through auditing fees, harsh discipline methods like the Rehabilitation Project Force, etc. By presenting homosexuality as a significant moral or spiritual issue, Hubbard could divert attention away from the potentially damaging effects of Scientology's practices on individuals' mental and emotional well-being. 6. Reinforcing an us versus them mentality. Hubbard's opposition to homosexuality could also serve to reinforce the insular us versus them mentality that is common in many cults. By demonizing homosexuals and associating them with moral or spiritual degradation, he created an external other that could be vilified, helping to bond Scientologists more tightly to the group. This mechanism would create a greater sense of community among followers, who would see themselves as part of a morally superior, spiritually enlightened group compared to the perverse outsiders. Conclusion. Hubbard's condemnation of homosexuality appears to be multifaceted, serving both personal and organizational interests. Scientifically, we now know that homosexuality is a natural variation of human sexuality, with no inherent psychological or moral defect. Yet Hubbard's rhetoric allowed him to manipulate cultural prejudices, exert control over his followers' personal identities, and create an adversary that reinforced his spiritual authority. Whether driven by personal bias, a desire for control, or broader strategic objectives, his attack on homosexuality was a tool to strengthen the boundaries of his system and distract from the harmful realities within.
Audiences know what to expect, and that is all they are prepared to believe in.
I didn't ask to come on this trip, did I? No, I don't think so. Did I ask you to be making me over and jump all kinds of hoops like some circus poodle? No, I don't think so. So as soon as we get to the next town, I'm jumping on the first man and I'm riding him all the way to New York City and away from you two puckered up, stuck up Buddhas, because this trip sucks. It sucks.
After all we have done to include you, you would leave us so quickly?
Like that.